do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
Are the Atlanta Hawks a playoff team? After committing to a rebuild just a couple of seasons ago, the Hawks now have a lot of young talent on their roster and might be looking to compete in 2021. They've made a couple of win-now moves, and rumors are saying they're looking to go all in to push for the Eastern Conference playoffs. Is that the route they should go, and if so, how do they get there? What's up, everybody? My name is Ethan, this is Courtside TV. Today we're going to be talking about the Atlanta Hawks. Trae Young has been very impressive for Atlanta so far in his young career, averaging nearly 30 points in just his second season. And despite, all of the stuff around him being traded for Luka Doncic and the Hawks having a chance to take Luka, Trae is a pretty good consolation prize. It sucks missing out on what looks like to be a generational superstar, but Trae Young is going to be a perennial all-star type guy, going to be one of the better point guards in the league for the foreseeable future. So they're pretty okay with having him. He is a guy who is a little bit undersized, not great on defense, but is one of the better three-point shooters, one of the better just offensive scorers in the league. There are questions about him, his efficiency, his locker room type of presence, as well as just his defense. Like I mentioned before, he's one of the worst defenders in the league. So if the Hawks are going to build a sustainable winner around Trae, they're going to have to get a lot of really solid defenders around him. Similar to what the Golden State Warriors have done with Steph Curry over the past couple of years, especially in that early run that they had. Trae and Steph you can compare them in some ways. Steph is a lot better at a lot of things, but Trae, you see flashes of Steph in his game, and he's probably, unfortunately, an even worse defender than Steph Curry is. Actually, I think Steph Curry's pretty underrated defensively, but that's a topic for another day. The point is that they will have to get a lot of solid another defensive guard in the backcourt to pair with him, as well as guys who can guard the wings and guard the other team's best player, where Trae Young is just not going to be able to do that. But overall, he has definitely been a very bright spot for them, and he is still extremely young and is already really, really good. So this is the star of the future for the Atlanta Hawks. John Collins has been the co-star for the Hawks over the last couple of years with Trae Young, and it's actually been kind of strange because his name has been in trade rumors over the past couple of months. There's rumors that the Hawks don't want to pay him, that they don't think he's good in the locker room, that they don't feel like he's a good fit with their team, whatever. And there's been rumors that they're looking to move away. Not sure if any of that will actually come true, but he is entering the last year of his rookie contract. They have the option to extend him this offseason, or they can wait until after this year and bring him back in restricted free agency, depending on what they choose to do. But it's, I think it makes sense for them to hold on to John Collins because he's still really good and really young, only 23 years old. He's incredibly bouncy, super athletic, big man. He's a pretty solid defender just because of his athleticism, and he seems like the type of player who would work well next to Trae. But if they do want to move off of him, if you can get something good back, I wouldn't be too upset about that, especially if you don't feel like he is the right guy to pay a lot of money to, if he's not worth that rookie extension. But I think it makes the most sense to keep him, but if you can get something pretty good back in a trade, I would not be super mad about that. But I think if they're trying to win now, Collins is the type of guy you should keep because he is definitely not at his peak yet, and even if he does sign that rookie max extension, I feel like he's still worth that contract. He's a really good player, average around 20 points on good efficiency. He is the type of guy who you want to have on your team. Clint Capela was the big acquisition at last year's trade deadline, and we have not yet seen him play for the Hawks. He was injured at the time of the trade, which occurred in February, and then the season was suspended in March while he was still rehabbing from that. So he is not yet suited up for Atlanta, as they were not invited to the bubble, but it stands to reason that he will be a similar player for the Hawks that he was for the Rockets. He was a nice pick and roll, athletic big man partner for James Harden, and it stands to reason that he will be the same here in Atlanta for Trae Young. So he is just an overall solid player, a good big man, not too overpaid. That contract is probably a little bit much for him, but it seems like pretty fair value. And he is just an overall above average starting NBA center. Never going to be an all-star, but just an overall solid big man. And if worst comes to worst, if things don't work out, whatever, that's a very tradable contract down the line at only, $17-18 million. He's a good enough player that another team will be able to find a use for him if the Hawks ever decide to move away. But as for right now, we'll have to just see how this looks, but, all indications point to this working out for them. Seems like a nice move, especially if they are trying to make a playoff push. He is a good player. And at only 26 years old, he's still very much in his prime, so he's got a lot of years left of being productive. So they should be very happy with Clint Capela as their starting center for the next couple of years while they're trying to make a playoff push. So taking a look at the cap sheet, they're going to have quite a bit of cap space this offseason, and they might decide to throw some contracts at some players to bring in and, try to make that push that I've mentioned. Let's just go through a couple of their expiring contracts real fast. You have Jeff Teague, who is expiring $19 million. He is probably not going to re-sign. He was an okay, point guard backup type of guy for Trae Young, but it doesn't really make sense for them to bring him back unless they are really serious about having a deep rotation and pushing for the playoffs, which even then I don't know if Jeff Teague is the best fit. So it seems more likely that he'll go sign with a contender on a veteran minimum. Then there's a couple guys that I think they should keep in DeAndre Bembry and Damian Jones, probably. Those are two guys who are, they've been pretty solid rotation pieces for them. They played well for the Hawks last year, specifically Bembry I thought was pretty good. And so those are two guys that I think if you can get them back on a fair deal, that makes sense because they're still young and fit your timeline. So you can round out the rotation with some of those guys. Skal Labissiere and Treveon Graham are, questionable there. Labissiere, I don't believe he even played for the Hawks after he was traded there mid-season, and Treveon Graham is an end-of-the-bench guy, which is not very relevant. And then Vince Carter is also expiring. He is retired. Shout out to Vince, man, one of the best dunkers of the era. Had an awesome career, awesome long career, and was a great veteran mentor for this Hawks team over the past couple of years. So good luck in retirement, Vince, and we're going to miss you in the NBA, bud. But that's pretty much it for their free agents. So what are they going to do potentially on the trade market and looking for guys on the free agent market? There's a couple free agents out there that they could potentially target to bring in to make this team better. It's weird because some of the top ones don't really fit this team. If we were talking about guys like Fred VanVleet and Montrezl Harrell, they kind of have guys in that position already. But if they are really serious about trying to get into the playoffs, Harrell isn't a bad option. Even VanVleet, who doesn't really fit on the roster with Trae Young, potentially just throwing him a big offer, he might be inclined to take it, and he's just a good player, and you could even start him next to Trae. It would be kind of awkward, but you could maybe make it work. I'd kind of caution against it just because both of them are a little bit undersized. But Harrell maybe as a six-man role here would make a little bit of sense. And then on the trade market there, Dwayne Dedmon is a movable contract. They brought him in. I believe he was actually on the team before and then signed with the Kings, and they traded back for him, if I'm not crazy. And that contract is a lot, and especially after bringing in Capela, he doesn't really seem to have a role here, so I would not be surprised to see them look for a partner for that. It might be hard to find a taker just because that's a lot of money for a guy who's 31 and is not very good. But, we'll see if anything materializes off of that. And then really just kind of continuing to develop this young talent. They have a couple of other young pieces that I didn't mention in DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish, and Kevin Huerter, all of which still have a lot of potential left and are still very young guys who they're going to be looking to develop over the next couple of years to grow alongside Trae Young as they all enter their primes. We've heard a couple of rumors about Kevin Huerter being used in a trade to, maybe move up in the draft or trade for a more win now player or whoever. We've heard his name kind of mentioned a lot, but it looks like they're going to hold on to DeAndre Hunter because he was drafted highly last year, and then Cam Reddish as well, who is a guy that has a lot of potential but has been, he had a very up and down rookie season, but it's still far too early to make any sort of judgment on what kind of player he's going to be. So what the Hawks probably should do is just stick it out with a lot of their young guys and then potentially bring in some veterans who you feel can round out their rotation. And with some internal improvement for guys like Trae and John Collins, they should be in a pretty good position to make a push for the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. So the Hawks also have the 6th overall pick in the draft, and there's been a lot of rumors about them potentially trading back or trading up even in order to get a different sort of player. They've been drafting in the top 10 over the past couple of years, and they have been one of the most active teams in the trade market, moving up and down and all across the board, as at the top of the draft. So I would not be surprised to see the Hawks make a move on draft night in order to get a more win now player, or move up if they really like somebody near the top. Either of those options are not out of the question whatsoever for Atlanta. So we will just have to see what they decide to do on draft night. But if you are looking to get some win now pieces, number 6 is a pretty good trade chip that you can use to get somebody. So if there's another team interested in moving up, the Hawks could use that to get a future piece or a player that slides right into their cap space or whatever, and that would not necessarily be a bad option. But generally, I caution teams against making win now moves so harshly. The Hawks, it might not be quite time for them to try to go all in yet. I know that they want to make sure that Trae Young is happy and that he believes that the team is committed to winning, but I think with what they have right now, they're going to be in that mix for a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. I think a lot of their guys are going to get better. They've got a better team than they have last year, and I really do feel like they are going to be in the mix for that 8th playoff spot in the Eastern Conference, just with really the roster that they have now. So you don't really need to overpay for veterans. You don't need to trade all your assets for a star. I think it just makes the most sense to kind of ride this out naturally, and build organically. But one thing that I think that they should probably do, and this not necessarily this offseason, but when the time comes for this, they should probably try to find a player to come in, and fill a lot of that cap space before they have to start handing extensions to a lot of their young guys. So Trae Young has 2 years left on his rookie contract. DeAndre Hunter's got the 3. Cam Reddish has the 3, and Kevin Huerter has 2. I'm not saying that all of those guys are going to command max space or are even going to be on the team in a couple of years, but specifically Trae Young and even John Collins as well. You guys are going to have to be extending those players pretty quickly, and so it does make a little bit of sense if you can get a star in, because that's kind of how you can get around cap space in a way, by bringing in somebody while you still have good players on rookie contracts, and then by the time you extend them, then you're over the cap, but you've already paid for all of these guys and they're on your roster, and then you'll have burn rights when it comes to re-signing them. So that's how you kind of keep a core together. So if they can get somebody, don't really know who that might be, and it probably will not happen this offseason. And I wouldn't overreach for a borderline star such as like Drew Holiday, or overpaying for Montrezl Harrell or Fred VanVleet. Those are not the guys I'm talking about. I'm talking about more, guys in a little bit of a higher tier. So if they can do that, I think that makes a little bit of sense. But that's really all I've got to say on the Hawks. I think that's going to be it for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And we are going to be uploading every day this week in order to get through all the rest of the teams before the draft. We're going to be uploading, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then next week on Monday and Tuesday as well. That gets exactly through all the teams before we're done, and then the draft is on Wednesday. So get excited for that. We're going to have a lot of content this week. But that's going to be it for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I'll see y'all in the next one.